that this became the logo of India. That's the point I want to make. Not that you have to love the Taj Mahal or anything like that. It's one of the most beautiful places on earth. I've been there. And it rotates at night. I was there on the night of the full moon. I've never seen anything like it. But again, everyone loves the Taj Mahal. And is that not the logo of India, even nationalist India? You see, so again, they're tapping into the genius of the people. And here we would have to say the genius of northern India, because southern India, which is where those other mosques are from, is quite different. This doesn't quite fit there. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. This is the mosque, by the way. Now we're going to end almost. This is a pomegranate, as if you didn't know. And I'm going to show you the pomegranate mosque. There it is. I love it. I love it. It was built by, here you had Sufi Sahib. I don't know much about him. I would like to know more. How many mosques did he build? I mean, now this was built by a man whom I'm going to say is similar to him. And this man was a pious man who was not an architect. He was not a builder. He didn't have any qualifications. But the merchants of Sri Lanka, of Colombo, they said, we need a mosque that's really beautiful in a tiny area because we don't have much room. So he said, then build it like a pomegranate. The pomegranate has so many seeds in such a little thing. So he builds it based on the pomegranate. And he built it himself. And he's not an architect. And he's not a builder. And he wouldn't take any money for it. He said, just give me the materials, I'll build it. And later on, the merchants gave endowments to his daughters. As I said, we love what your father did. He wouldn't take a penny. This is for you. Keep going. I love this. But again, you see, why the pomegranate? Well, I gave you one story. But see, also in Sri Lanka, Islam, they owe to the traders who were coming from Persia and from the Yemen, Hadramaut, and elsewhere. But these traders would bring them pomegranates. So the pomegranate becomes associated with their Islamic past, just like you would associate your Islamic past here in your wonderful country, with the things that happened to you in the past. Your great leaders, your great figures. So for them, the pomegranate's very special. Keep going. And there's, of course, the pomegranate. Look how many seeds are in that tiny area. So that's what he's basing it on. Keep going. Keep going. Oh, we're not finished. Okay, sorry. Tectonic architecture. Islamic architecture is tectonic. If you know what that word means, I'll give you a PhD. But tectonic means fitting the earth. Fitting the earth. A lot of modern architecture is consciously not tectonic. And a lot of Western architecture destroys the earth that it builds on. We usually didn't do that. Look how they built into the mountain. This is in Turkey, of course. And we did this everywhere. Look at Al Hamra in Granada, perfectly tectonic. And I could show you houses in Moorish Spain that are so tectonic, it's unbelievable. And being tectonic, fitting the hill they're on, gives them special flow of wind, of air, of sunlight, and so forth. Because they say, God created this hill, we will not destroy it. We'll build on it with respect. Let's keep going. Again, here you have, of course, the mausoleum of Jalaluddin Rumi. Now, you've seen that so many times. This was built before the Ottomans, the Ottoman Turks. This is during the time of the Seljuk Turks. And in their time, the big Christian community whom they're ruling and who loved them and were the most faithful of all Christian communities were the Armenians. So this imitates the Armenian church. It's totally different, but it shows respect to the Armenian Christian tradition. Take the next slide. See? That's an Armenian church. Don't you see the similarity? Now, you're not going to confuse this one with that one. But this is to show the Armenians that we respect you. We're not here to destroy you or your culture. you're welcome here, and we want to be welcomed as well. Keep going. Now we come to the great Ottomans, whom I love tremendously. These were great people. And here, they're not imitating the Armenian church anymore, are they? What are they imitating? And they did this by royal decree. The next picture. Next picture. Next picture. Hagia Sophia. The first great Christian church in history. And they say all of our mosques will be based on this mother church. They're different, but to show respect to the Greek Orthodox tradition, because we're not here to destroy it. And there are many other things we could say about the Ottomans. For example, the Seljuk mosques won't have big windows because there's danger of attack. The Ottoman mosques will have big windows. Haven't you seen them? Because they will say that we're safe here. We're in control. There's nothing to worry about. We've also got gardens around. Keep going. Keep going. Now, West Africa. Sorry that we don't have more from Africa, but this is a mosque in West Africa and made of mud, and this goes back to the legacy of Mansa Kankan Musa, the great emperor of Mali, probably the wealthiest emperor in history. He controlled the world's gold. And he goes to Cairo on his pilgrimage and causes inflation for 15 years. And then he finds Andalusian architects, and he says, come with me to Mali and build mosques, but no Andalusian mosques. We want African mosques. And so this is built in an area where you don't have trees, you don't have stones, you've got clay. And they're beautiful, they're cool, they fit the environment. Keep going, keep going. Now we're about to end. I'm sorry to take so much time. This was made, go back to the rug, please. This was made by a sister of ours who lives in Edmonton, in Alberta, Canada. She is a professional weaver, a traditional weaver, and this is a prayer mat. Now, you probably knew it was a prayer mat, but the thing is, you don't see it with the eyes of the First Nations. Because to the First Nations of Alberta and of British Columbia, this is the change of the seasons. And so they would say, oh, what a beautiful prayer mat. You have put in design the change of the seasons. So she did this out of respect for the First Nations. Keep going. This is a mosque built there in Alberta. Keep going. I think it's beautiful. And the woodwork on the inside is also First Nation woodwork. And the architects who did it were from the tribes of Alberta. Many of them actually became Muslims in building it. Keep going. These are some of my friends. This is Azim Ibrahim and some other beautiful Scottish Muslims, proud to be Scots, proud to be Muslims. The Scottish community, Muslim community, in my opinion, is one of the best in Europe, and they tend to be less divided than a lot of our Muslim communities. But here they created, with the permission of the Scottish Parliament, and some of them are in the Scottish Parliament, a Muslim tartan. Let's keep going. Okay, this is the tartan. You see the white, the yellow, the green, the black. The blue represents, let's go to the next one. The blue represents the Scottish flag. Come down a little bit. Okay, green represents Islam. Up just a little bit. 5 white lines and 5 pillars. 6 gold lines, the pillars of faith, and the black square, the Kaaba. So this is the Tartar, of the Scottish Muslims. And in any case, can we take just a few more minutes? I'm so sorry. I just want to, read to you a few things. There's a lot, but it's in that article that you have. As-Sarakhsi, who is one of the great Hanafi jurists, he says, whatever is established by good custom and sound cultural convention, whether it's Chinese or Indian or whatever it may be, is equally well established by sound legal proof, meaning by the Quran and the Sunnah. That's what he means, that this is the imperative of our religion. To become a Muslim doesn't mean you have to become an Arab. And it doesn't mean that you have to wear a particular dress. Another great judge, Abdul Wahhab al-Baghdadi, he says, and he was writing about 900 years ago, he says, the rejection of good cultural usage has no meaning at all. It makes no sense. To follow sound custom is an obligation. That's what he says. I didn't say that. And then we take Ash-Shatibi, God be pleased with him, one of our greatest jurists of all time from Granada. He cautioned that juristic incompetence can impose no difficulty upon a people harsher than to require them to repudiate their sound local customs and conventional usage. You may not have a problem with that, but what about, for example, the Zulu who become Muslims? What about the Xhosa who become Muslims, the Torza who become Muslims, these other great African people? So they're not going to be Indians, as much as we love India. And they're not going to be Indonesians. They're going to be Zulus. They're going to be Xhosa. They're going to be Torza. And they will be the best Muslims you ever saw. And to the extent possible, we want them to bring back the legacy of their great forefathers and mothers. And all that's good in that, honor it and keep it. One Korean sister who's a student of mine, before she became my student, she said to me, every day I feel less Korean. I told her, it's not going to be like that. If we do Islam right, every day you will be more Korean, but you'll also be more Muslim, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. He said also that he insisted that the art of handing down fatwas in harmony with good aspects of local culture fulfills the fundamental Islamic legal objective of buttressing the masalih, the benefits of a society's well-being. Because when people develop their customs, like the Indonesians walking through water to go into a temple or a mosque, they do that for benefits in their culture. It's not something arbitrary. So pay attention to it. Tasuli, who's another great jurist, and I'll end with this. He says that allowing the people to follow their good customs and usages and general aspirations in life is obligatory. To hand down rulings in opposition to this is one of the greatest judges in Islamic history, one of the greatest scholars of judgeship. To hand down rulings in opposition to this is gross deviation and tyranny. So may God bless you all. May we work together. I'm very happy to be here, honored beyond words, believe me. And I hope to be back again and again. And I hope that you'll continue to do your amazing work. And I hope especially with regard to our African brothers and sisters that we are able to usher them into an Islam that fits them. We visited Harare in Cape Town, the township there. And interestingly, some of the Xhosa there, I can't do the click, you know, they said that we don't become Muslims because we don't want to be Indian. Well, you know, you're Indian, you want to be Indian. I'm not. And they're not either. And so I'll be who I am, and they'll be who they are. And Islam gives us amplitude. In fact, some of them said, we don't want to be Muslims because we don't like spices. And some of them said, we don't want to be Muslims because we don't want to burn our dead. Of course, here they're confusing us with Hindus. And in any case, God give us wisdom in all we do. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh, for that wonderful lecture. And inshallah, we want to invite you to one of our retreats, maybe next year, inshallah, or the year after when we have our annual retreats. How many of you have bought tickets for tomorrow's concerts? Welcome. Welcome to Brother Yusuf Islam. I know this is not on a program, but he's agreed to say a few words to us. So welcome to Brother Yusuf Islam, who doesn't need an introduction. We all know him and we all love him.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, I didn't expect to speak, but I kind of thought I might be expected to. Alhamdulillah, we've heard Dr. Omar, and I think many of you would start to understand what the message he is delivering and how similar that is to the kind of work which I'm doing at the moment. And that connection should be made because when I entered Islam, I didn't have any model apart from the Prophet ﷺ, and then the Muslim community. And the Muslim community, I gave this analogy. I was like entering into a fancy dress party and I didn't know what I should come as. And so I tried everything. I went to Sudan and I did this, and I went, to Afghanistan, Pakistan, and I did that. And Saudi Arabia, I refused to wear the red and white, to be honest. I chose white. And so all these things happen. And of course, I was already confused in some sense because my father was from Cyprus, Greek Cypriot. My mother was from Sweden. So I was born in London, which gave me a kind of a neutral identity. And for sure, that was one of the problems I had to solve, was to find out who I was. Yes, that was the challenge. And alhamdulillah, I did not meet a Muslim. Obviously, I met Muslims. Nobody ever told me about Islam, nobody. They might have served me a curry, they might have, been the guard on a swimming pool or so. I don't know. Nobody told me I'm a Muslim. Oh, actually, one did. He was my roadie just when I started. He said, I've become a Muslim and I'm going to work as a caretaker in a mosque. I said, okay, really? Okay, up to you. That was Kevin. And I never thought any more about it. But it was only when I received the Quran that I received Islam. And that was not even through a Muslim. That was through my brother, who had married an Israeli girl and had gone to Jerusalem and had been struck by the beauty of the mosque. So I'm just giving some little hints about the great journey to finding who we are. And I think what has been described today is something that we should reflect about and reflect on, because it does, Allah says in the Quran, we've made you nations and tribes, that you may recognize one another. Oh, he's an African. Oh, he's Indonesian. The British have a bit of a problem. Polo hat or not, I don't know. Because they've spread themselves so far and wide. But there is a European look. And there's European culture, although today the culture has been almost wiped out by technology. I'm not going to go in to give a speech, but tomorrow I'm going to be giving a concert because there are a lot of hearts out there that we want to open, inshallah. And may Allah guide them. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
You have to buy tickets for tomorrow. There's no free shows. Tomorrow, inshallah. We don't have the band here. We need the instruments. Okay, the floor is open for questions. We have about 10 to 15 minutes. So please try and be as brief as possible. I'm sure many of you have burning questions which you want to ask.
What we heard Sheikh speaking about, where in fact many Muslims today think that they have to actually abandon many aspects of their culture to be good Muslim. And now we see that Brother Yusuf Islam actually has made a transition. I think there's a connection between what Sheikh is saying and transition he has made. So I just want to comment on that.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Doctor has mentioned about the emperor who allowed those masjids in China to be built. I remember reading, I want to verify if you came across it, that this emperor, not only he did that, but he wrote a poem about the Prophet ﷺ, although he was not a Muslim. But he wrote a poem, I think it was of 100 verses, if my memory is. I remember reading it quite a few times, came across that. Although he was not a Muslim, who gave permission to build those mosques in China because he had so much, he heard and he respected the Prophet so much. Okay. I don't know if you came across that.
After you.
Okay, my question is, I love how you mentioned about the Xhosa and the Zulu and etc. And my husband always says this, that we've been here for so many years, yet people think Islam is only Indian. So how would we, as a conservative society, I myself find myself closed-minded and conservative, confusing Indian culture and Islam. How would we take Islam to all the other cultures in South Africa?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The point that our brother made is very well taken. Of course, our brother Yusuf has talked about that you come into Islam and it's like you're going to a dress party and you have nothing to wear. And a lot of us give up our identity when we become Muslims. Our brother has his story. You can read about it beautifully in his book. I went through the same thing. When I became a Muslim, I was extremely literal. I believed in God, no question about that. I would do anything if God wants me to do it. And basically, I gave up everything. And I didn't know I could dress like a Westerner. I gave that up as well. I was very hard-headed. I made a lot of mistakes. I hurt my grandfather. I hurt my grandmother. I hurt my own parents, although I loved them. But it's like, who are you? You know, are you still our son? And one of the great things that happened to me was that in 1975, I held a conference in Chicago to celebrate 1,000 years after the death of Imam al-Bukhari. I loved hadith. And I brought to that conference in IIT in Chicago great scholars, Sheikh Abdullah Mubarak, Sheikh Mustafa A'zami, and another great sheikh from India called Fazl Rahman Gunuri. He was a great, great scholar. And he told me, you have to study usul al-fiqh. And he told me how to do it. And then he said, you have to study some other things. No one probably ever helped me so much in my life. When I began to study usul al-fiqh, then I saw, my God, you know, you can actually drive in cars and you can wear clothes. I mean, some of you, you know, Western clothes and so forth. And, you know, some of you know Vincent Cornell. He came to Cornell University when I was there. And I never knew that he became a Muslim. He wasn't a Muslim, but I was, and I called up all the Muslims at Cornell. There were about 100 in those days, 1970. He was one of them. He said, oh my God. He said, I put myself down as a Muslim to save myself from the campus crusade of Christ, and I got caught by this Dr. Umar. I wasn't a doctor at that time. And then years ago, I met him again. I didn't know who he was. I said, you're Vincent Cornell. Where are you from? Arizona. Oh, you're from Arizona. Where did you? Cornell. I said, were you there? And he said, are you that Luddite? You're that Luddite. And I was a Luddite. It's like, but then all of a sudden I saw, you know, you can dress differently. I remember I went back to my mother, and she took me to a good clothing store, and she was delighted to buy me some clothes, you know. And then, of course, you know, Muslim clothes is what I love the best. But they're not always appropriate. I remember even in Chicago, I wear a turban, I wear the shawl. But one of our great Deobandi sheikhs, I told him, if I go to the University of Chicago to speak, do I go dressed like this? He said, no. you put on a suit and tie, because they'll all be saying, why is he wearing a turban? This is a secular institution, and they're not liberal. So this is a problem we have, and it shouldn't be like that. You don't want people to give up their identity. You'll hurt them. Some of us maybe are tough. They say some converts are spiritual athletes. Maybe this brother was one. Maybe I was one. Most are not that way. They fall to the wayside. As one of our great scholars, Dr. Jackson says, Abdul Hakim Jackson, he said, if you break a rule, you can do tawbah. We don't want to break rules. If you break a psyche, there's no tawbah. You can't do tawbah from a broken psyche. And I have seen brothers and sisters go crazy. In Chicago, I wasn't the only one like that. We were literalists. And one of our sisters named Fatima, she went insane. And she would walk out in front of buses. Tawakkul ala Allah. I mean, it's sad. She went completely insane. It was just too much. She broke. And the next question was about what? Quickly? Sorry? Yeah, and you know, Islam came to China in the Tang dynasty. And we have stories like this about the Tang emperor. There may be differences about their authenticity. But it's said even that the Tang emperor had an ominous vision that he would lose his empire. And then he saw this beautiful man from the West, our Prophet ﷺ, and he saved him. And so they say that things like this made him welcome Islam. And again, maybe he even became a Muslim himself, like Najashi in Ethiopia. The Tatars, the Golden Horde, they were our biggest enemy. They were destroying Muslims. You could not sacrifice. You could not eat halal. You could not pray. These are Genghis Khan's army. And then one of them, who became called Birkat Shah, he became called Baraka Shah. He had a dream that he would lose his kingdom. This was in Bukhara. And he was going to lose his kingdom, and he went to a sheikh whom they call Sheikh al-Alam, the sheikh of the world. I know him. I know where he is. And Sheikh al-Alam said, yes, you are going to lose your kingdom, but I can save it for you. But you'll have to be my disciple, and you'll have to become a Muslim. And so he did. He became a Muslim, and all the Golden Horde became Muslims, and the White Horde became Muslims. It's one of the great victories of Islam. And then his rule remained for 300 years after that. So these kind of things happen in history. And then the last thing our sister said, I'm sorry, remind me quickly.
About it being an Indian religion, not a Zulu. How can I...
Yes, this is very good. So the thing is that, you know, you take this beautiful religion, you take them the crystal clear water. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, the 5 pillars, the 6 pillars of faith. You take them the basics of the law and everything else. But you've got to let them develop their Islamic culture. There was a man that I knew in Arabia. I should be more honest, I knew of him. I didn't actually know him. And, you know, when the Soviet republics became independent, he would go to a number of them. And there the women, they hadn't prayed, they hadn't fasted, they wore typical Russian-type clothing, and they wanted to dress, quote unquote, Islamically. So they say, how do we do that? And he said, I don't know how you're going to do that, but I'll buy you the cloth, and you make the dresses. And, you know, he went to them, and he said, what is the cloth you like? Well, we like this, we like that, we like this. And then he said, now you go home and make your own dresses. And so they made beautiful dresses. One people makes a dress different from another. They fit the guidelines. So, and again, have you ever been to Pakistan? Have you ever been to Rawalpindi? They have a beautiful museum there called Lok Warsa. Lok Warsa in Punjabi means the heritage of the people. And it's one of the most beautiful museums I've ever seen. The person who took me there told me, and I was thinking this, because often you put people in a museum it's like a funeral. And this person said to me, we're not doing that in this museum. This museum is designed to keep the cultures of Pakistan alive. But you go there and see the traditional cultures of the Punjabis, of the Pashtun, of the Kashmiris, and of all the other groups, how beautiful they are and how distinctive they are. So cultural creation is very important. We are people who traditionally were extremely skillful. We are people of guilds and crafts. And we did things beautifully. The Prophet taught us, ﷺ, God is beautiful and He loves beauty. Sahih hadith. We understood from that He doesn't love ugliness. We say beauty is the splendor of truth. Ugliness is the mark of falsehood. So traditional Islamic cultures were extremely beautiful, but they differ from village to village and from people to people, and they express, each of us, our own identity. And in a country like my own, I know my country much better than yours, and I really want to know you. I want to learn from you. But in a country like my own, if we're talking about an American Islamic culture, well, there will never be one. And Islam is everywhere in the United States, and there are more Muslims in the United States now than Jews. We are the biggest non-Christian religion in the United States. But you have to have regional cultures, local cultures, and subcultures. And sometimes, like if you're of an Indian background. So the Indian component will always be part of your subculture, but it won't be part of the subculture of a Zulu or of a Torza or of these other beautiful people. And again, in my country, as C.D. Yusuf said, we live in the time of the destruction of cultures, the global monoculture. And it's really uprooting culture everywhere. And when you do that, you create bonsai human beings who are like these little bonsai trees that it looks like a cedar, but it can't survive the winter. It's only this big. And we have bonsai human beings today, because if you don't have culture, you don't have roots. My mother lived through the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl of western Kansas. Her father had been a prosperous farmer, a good farmer. He could take the dirt. He taught me. He could take the dirt in his hand and say, it's time to plant. And we're going to plant maize, or we're going to plant this or that. He knew that. And he had a beautiful farm. And then the Dust Bowl came. For 9 years, even weeds wouldn't grow. My mother lived through that. Dust storms every day. And, they survived that. Often living off of government-issued peanut butter. My mother hated peanut butter. I liked it, but she said, you can eat as much as you want, but this is what I grew up